Hello, everyone, and thank you all for joining us during the Lytham Partner Fall 2021 Investor Conference. My name is Robert Breza, Vice President of Lytham Partners. Our next panel presentation is titled Growing Without Borders, an International Perspective. We have five great presenting companies today: Avicanna CEO, Clever Leaf CEO, Delta-9 CEO, and Khiron Life Sciences CEO. As a reminder, all of the companies will be available for one-on-one virtual meetings. If you have not already signed up, please send me an email at Breza, B-R-E-Z-A, @lythampartners.com, or visit www.lythampartners.com/virtual and click on the one-on-one meeting request button. To get started, I'd like to ask each of the panelists to give me an overview or give us an overview of the company and indicate which company or which country you're selling into the most or where you're seeing the most success. So I'll just go alphabetically. Why don't I start out with Aras? Go ahead, please.
Thanks, Rob. Is the alphabetical based on my name or the name of the company?
The company. Either way, you got it covered.
Either way, I'm first. No, pleasure to be here. Thanks for making the time. So Avicanna is a Canadian, Toronto-based biopharma company. We've been in this industry for 6 years now. Our focus initially was drug development, formulation development, and over the past years, we've established vertical integration in Colombia with some of our colleagues that are in this call, and we've recently started commercialization efforts across a number of different channels. The one that is today the most active and I would say the most successful is our Canadian commercialization in terms of our medical products and our skincare products that are now across medical channels and adult use channels. So we're quite active within that realm, but we're also active in South America, where we're selling some of the medical products under prescription, and we're selling some of the products in going into drug registration from a pharmaceutical perspective. So while we're Canadian based in terms of R&D and products, we're South America based in terms of supply chain and manufacturing, and in terms of sales today, we're active in about 12 countries. So it's starting, but we certainly like to see this as a global marketplace, and because we're not, even though we're Canadian based, we're not at all involved in the recreational products. We believe that this is a market, this is a global marketplace for us.
Great, thank you very much. Kyle, you're next alphabetically.
All right, great. Yeah, well, thanks, Rob, for having us here. So I'm Kyle Dettweiler. I'm the CEO of Clever Leaves. Clever Leaves is a NASDAQ-listed cannabis company. We're probably best known as a B2B operator in the sector. Probably the most recognizable asset that we have is our Colombian operation. It is Latin America's only EU Gmp certified operation. We have about 1.8 million square feet of active greenhouse down there. We also have a Portuguese operation on 9 million square feet of land and about 110,000 square feet of greenhouse. We have a smattering of investments in German narcotics importation companies, which we can talk about why those are important later. And then we also have a second division outside of our cannabis division, which is the nutraceutical division. And that business is based around a nutraceutical company in Phoenix, Arizona that we acquired about 2 years ago. So yeah, hopefully that's a quick overview of Clever Leaves.
That sounds great. John, I'll turn it over to you next.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. My name's John Arbuthnot. I'm the CEO of Delta-9 Cannabis. Our principal focus is the Canadian market, based in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We are one of Canada's oldest cannabis companies. Have been operating on the medical side of the industry back to 2013, producing medical cannabis products under the MMPR program, distributing those to medical patients across the country. Obviously, the Canadian market has evolved quite a bit from 2013. We now participate in the recreational and medical side of the industry. One of the few diversified names in the Canadian space. So we are licensed by Health Canada for cultivation, processing, product manufacturing, and distribution across 6 Canadian provinces, selling Delta-9 branded products across the country. We're also a licensed retailer, currently operating 16 bricks and mortar retail stores with direct-to-consumer online sales in 2 provincial markets. So we do vertically integrate ourselves in the recreational space right through to the end consumer. And we also operate a business-to-business segment, which is effectively sales of our proprietary growing platform, our grow pods, sales of cultivation equipment, sales of cannabis genetics, and providing consulting and licensing services to other licensed and pre-licensed cannabis businesses. So consider that the more picks and shovel side of the industry. And we do have several international opportunities in front of us as well. Sales of cannabis genetics, more on the medical side of the industry and international markets, as well building out facilities using that picks and shovel side of our business internationally. So again, Delta 9's the more diversified approach on the Canadian space.
Perfect. Alvaro, I'll ask you to go next, please.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you for having us here. It's always great to be in this type of events, and it's always nice to see the rest of the guys here. I don't think we've seen each other in quite some time, so thank you for that. My name is Alvaro Torres. I am the co-founder and CEO of Khiron. Khiron is a global B2C medical cannabis company. We are focused on building demand and being able to access and provide medical cannabis solutions to our patients in the markets that we're targeting. We started here in Colombia. We are vertically integrated in the sense that we start by having our own network of clinics from which we are driving most of our prescriptions, and those clinics allow us to build up evidence that's allowing us to convince more doctors and get a lot more demand. We are, one of the companies that first started here in Colombia. We are now selling in Colombia, in Peru, in Brazil, in Germany, and in the UK. All of these are finished Khiron branded products. We believe that the international opportunity is very big, and we are in very early stages. And we also believe that our ability to access patients and convince doctors is going to be key to be differentiated in the future. And we're very excited about what's happening in the rest of the countries of Latin America. We now have clinics in Colombia. We have them in Peru. We are opening one in Rio very soon and one in London as well in the next couple of months. So very excited of the growth and to see that the world is now embracing more and more medical cannabis, which is really our focus.
Sounds great. Maybe I'll just start off with one question for each of the companies here. I'll start with you, Kyle. When you look at the operations you have in Colombia and Portugal, I know you ship to like 15 different countries. What would you say you've seen the most over the last 12 to 24 months in terms of upside with countries you're focused on? I mean, where do you think you'll see the most upside?
Well, geographically, I'd say we look mostly at 4 different countries: Germany, Israel, Brazil, and Australia. Each one of those markets has different characteristics. Germany is a largely flower market, partially an extract market, but fully EU GMP market. Israel is mostly flower, very few extracts, but not quite EU GMP, but more of like an Israeli version of GMP. Brazil is extracts only, and it's very, very pharmaceutical registration process down there that has its own kind of Latin American quirks. And then, Australia is a bit of a mix. And so we're selling both kind of, extracts and flower into those markets. So I think each one of those 4, I could spend, 20 minutes talking about the ins and outs of those, but I think they're probably the most exciting. Mexico, we are starting to see some movement. And, I am calling in from our headquarters in Florida. And, there's a part of me that thinks that the U.S. could be around the corner too. So, probably those 4 international geographies, though, are our main focus. Perfect.
Great. Aras, I'll ask you next. I mean, I know you just made a big export to Ecuador. I know that you've got quite a few countries. Where have you seen the most success as you think about, starting with the first country to the last country? What have you learned through number 1 through 12 that would be interesting or notable for investors to think about as you've learned through that hard work process?
I think the guys here would agree that they're all different. The requirements, the regulations, the process, they're all different. And, the Ecuador export was relatively smaller one, actually, but because of our TSX senior exchange listing, every time we enter a new market, we have to press release it. It's their way of showing that what we're doing is legal, and it's an interesting process we go through. But in terms of market opportunities for us, I would Our focus, I would say, today is in the Canadian marketplace, in the South American marketplace as a general continent, and then the United States. In the United States, we're active with our skincare line Pura. We have a collaboration with an NBA great, Al Harrington, and his brand Replay. In Canada, so just back to the US. US is a really interesting opportunity because of the skincare topical CBD area, and that's as far as we'll take it because we're not in the business of pissing off the FDA. But when it comes to the Canadian marketplace, and John can agree with me, I'm sure on this, it's a much more established market. There's thousands of SKUs. There's, now there's 1,000 dispensaries in the Ontario province alone. It's a great playground to put out more advanced, more proprietary products, which is what we've done. We've learned a lot from that experience, being in the adult use channel, being in the medical channel. And within the adult use channel, we're still selling medical products. So Canada is a really good playground for us to learn more about the products, but also to generate data that helps and guides our clinical development. And then finally, South America, I would probably say me and Kyle and Alvaro here probably represent 50% of the business that's done in that entire continent. And by the time that continent grows and it reaches what they project to be a $4 or $5 billion cannabis-based medicine market, if we have a portion of that, I think companies alone are going to be very successful. So I think Latin America is in very early stages, and very few companies have been able to successfully build the infrastructure to be able to be ready for the future of that. But for us, what we've seen in the last 6 months is that emerging market is certainly emerging. So it's very exciting to be there as well.
That's great. Alvaro, I'll turn it over to you next. I mean, I know you've been selling cannabis into the 6 countries you've named earlier. When do you think your EMEA revenues, knowing that you, and as Aras just pointed out, the 3 of you, Kyle, yourself, and him represent a large market in Europe, or in Latin America. What are your plans in Europe, and how do you see that unfolding relative to the Latin American side of the business?
Well, Rob, I think, as I said, we are a branded company, a patient-focused company. We started selling medical cannabis in Colombia Q2 of last year, and in the last year we've been growing 72% quarter on quarter on medical cannabis sales. We started selling in Europe around December and March in Germany, and those sales now represent 30 to 40% of our entire medical cannabis sales for a quarter like what's happening right now in Q3. And so I think the way that we are looking at our business is more about how do we go after the patient, how do we educate that doctor, and then we work backwards and find the right suppliers that can help us to be able to produce the products that the patients are looking for. But I think with the stickiness of our business model with the education, and even in the UK, and now that we're going to build clinics, is driving a lot of growth. And that's important for us because, that it helps us to mitigate a lot of the risks that happen by working overseas, currency, political risks. So when you start to look at a company like ours that just recently starting to Europe and gaining so much ground, and of course that growth that we're having in Europe is also coupled with a very strong profitability. I think a year from now, probably our sales will be 50-50, considering that we're going to enter Mexico also very soon, which is a very big market, and we already started in Brazil last quarter, and we're opening a clinic there soon to continue to do our growth. But I think all of that combined helps us to create a lot of data, be able to present it to more doctors, convince more doctors about the quality of the products that we have, even if they are not produced by us. I think we now have a very efficient supply chain that allows us to get really high quality products. Right now we source everything in Europe, within Europe. But as probably Kyle and Aras will tell you, the more that Latin America starts opening up, you can start looking at some also better options. But the market that we're building, I think, is tremendous, and the impact that it's having in our growth is actually very, very positive for us.
Great. John, you've been very instrumental in kind of transforming, the industry from medical to recreational. You've been one of the oldest in Canada. Yet now you're moving in a new direction as well with the grow pods. Can you talk to us about the opportunity you see with grow pods specifically as it relates to Canada, also from the international market, and how you see that business growing? Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess our our infrastructure business, our B2B business, it's an interesting play. You don't see many Canadian-focused companies that have tiptoed into that space. So, it started with Canadian legalization. Obviously a wave of build-outs of cannabis facilities across the country. Huge amount of interest in our GrowPod platform is, really a turnkey Health Canada compliant, already Health Canada licensed platform for operators to get in and build out facilities. Built out over 24 facilities here in Canada, to date using that platform, and have now started to see interest internationally. We built out facilities last year in the U.S., in Michigan and Maine. We're currently contracted on facilities in Montana and Illinois. It's funny, every time a U.S. state legalizes for medical or recreational purposes, we start to see an influx of inbound emails and interest and engagement on additional build-outs and facilities. How we're looking to position out in front of U.S. legalization is, we anticipate a very similar growth curve in the U.S. market, a build-out of millions of square feet of cultivation space, likely to ramp up, over the next few years. We've now built out got almost 500,000 square feet of licensed cultivation space across North America. So, we are even seeing exposure to the growth in the U.S. market in advance of federal legalization, which I know is a tricky spot for a lot of TSX or main board, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange listed companies. So I think it gives us interesting exposure to international growth opportunities, where if it's not cannabis touching activities, there's still exposure to upside for us through that B2B segment. So an interesting take on international exposure in the cannabis space.
Fantastic. Maybe I'll just I'll start at the top of my screen. I'll go back to Kyle here. What would you say has been one of the biggest misconceptions from the public market investors' point of view on the international market? Where do you find yourself having to spend time with investors on convincing them that the international market is significantly different from the United States and Canada, for that matter?
Yeah, there's probably a couple of big differences. I usually, kind of answer a question like that by saying, okay, take everything you know about, the U.S. recreational business for that, dispensary you went to in Las Vegas, and forget it. Like when you walk into a pharmacy in Berlin, none of those rules apply. There is no free pass just because cannabis is a new industry that, cannabis has looser regulations than the Lipitor or Humira or other pharmaceutical products that sit on that same shelf. That's where this famous EU Gmp certification and all of these other, narcotics control import procedures come into play. So you got to stand right next to the big, pharma companies. That means, if you have a recall, you could be criminally liable. There's a lot of things that go into pharmaceutical standards that American cannabis companies aren't used to dealing with. One of them would be oversight by the FDA, which I think is frankly an inevitability. But, we're getting a look at what a federally legal system in a high-functioning pharmaceutical environment like Germany or Brazil or Australia or Israel can look like. So that's kind of, number one, that's probably the biggest difference. Number two, be patient. International pharmaceutical projects take years. We started to look at one of our, Brazilian partnerships. That partnership began 4 years ago. Supply agreements got put into place about 2 years ago. They were signed about a year ago, and we might sell the product within the next, few quarters, right? They take a really, really long time. So it's not for everyone. It requires big balance sheets. It requires patience. It requires, foresight. But the third thing, which I think is now, let's get to the exciting part, is the pharmaceutical business is a lot stickier. Go listen to Miguel's call yesterday about the Aurora business, and he's highlighting the international medical business as potentially the one of the crown jewels of Aurora. Now think about, where does that stickiness come from, right? If Clever Leaves is a supplier to somebody like Ethypharm in Germany or a Green Care in Brazil, our products are integrated into basically like a pharmaceutical monograph or, dossier. If those, you want to change one thing, if Clever Leaves wanted to change the strain that was being used to extract the product, that would require a whole new, recertification, new stability data, new product validation, new product registration. So that's internal within Cleverly. So to move that to another pharmaceutical supplier, would be even more tricky, assuming there was another one that had the same formulations, the Gmp certifications, whatever else is entailed. So as you think about, okay, what's the more valuable business, dollar for dollar, I would argue that, pharmaceutical revenue, because of that stickiness, trades at a higher multiple. So, this is a bizarre fact that most people aren't aware of, but in the pharma space, a branded pharma company might trade at, 8 to 10 times EBITDA. A low-cost generic company might trade at 15 to 20 times because of the value of that cost structure. But if you looked at the contract drug manufacturing organizations or CDMOs, they might trade even north of that because their product, their supply chain is almost more valuable than any one molecule, right? Because as long as a drug is sold that fits that profile, you know that an ingredient is involved, and there are not many companies that can do it. So that is it's a different perspective, right? It's less about, that celebrity endorsement or how good is that retail location? How close to the biggest strip are you? It's more about, how good is your drug dossier? How good is your stability data? Do you have the proper, pharmacovigilance procedures in place to track the product from, seed all the way to, patient use in some pharmacy in a different country? So those are just very different businesses, and it's hard for most people who are used to an adult use business or even the Canadian kind of medical industry to kind of understand how complicated this international market can be.
Sure, that's great summary. Thank you. Aras, I'd love to touch base with you on a little bit of suppliers, how you work with suppliers, where do you see the advantage of using them, and maybe in some cases when it becomes too tricky to not use them. I'd love to just get your perspective as you're expanding.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue from also what Kyle brought on. I 100% agree with everything he covered. I mean, I just want to touch on the biggest misconception, and I think Kyle nailed it. It's U.S. versus the rest of the world, really, right? I mean, yeah. I think for us, I imagine for most of the guys in this call, we've been too cannabis for biotech, and we've been too biotech for cannabis in many ways, and I think they look at us and look at the revenues of the company today, and they say, well, the guys that are, in the U.S. are doing exponentially larger amounts of revenue, but the answer to that is they're selling joints. They're just because they're selling cannabis, it doesn't mean they're in the same industry. So I think that big misconception is the fact that we're all involved in cannabis-based products. All the companies should be, measured from the same metrics, and they have the same lifespans, or they would have the same multipliers in their valuation. So completely agree with all of that. And to relate that to your supplier question, I mean, in South America and for global operations, I am the supplier, right? So I'm doing the cultivation, the extraction, and that's going into my own cosmetic, medical, and pharmaceutical products. But in Canada, because they're not allowing us to import, I have to outsource the entire process, which I do through several licensed producers. We outsource the manufacturing of it, and the challenge for us has been dealing with the Canadian regulations. That even within the medical side, Canada does not require stability studies. They do not require the same level of standards that we actually have to deal with in other countries, that Kyle was alluding to. So to find licensed producers in Canada that meet those pharmaceutical standards when they don't have to has been a bit of a challenge, and that's been a bit of a process, because yes, it's the same companies that can do pre-rolled joints that can do a capsule, right? And the capsule is going to an oncology patient. We have our products in, the biggest hospitals here in Canada, and it's being treated within the same standards. So that's been the main challenge for us, but I think we've now identified the right partners that can meet those quality specifications.
Great, thank you. I'll start or go next to John. As you think about your suppliers, obviously it's going to be a little bit more different from the grow pods, especially. I'm assuming you're not manufacturing them. So
we do we do actually.
Do you work with other? I guess my question would be then is, who do you work with as you or partner or suppliers? How important are they to you in that aspect of delivering the grow pods on time, et cetera, et cetera?
So for us, the equipment side of the business, it's complex. We do manufacture ourselves. We also manufacture with a third party here in Winnipeg, and with a facility located in North Dakota as well for the US based projects. supply chain can be a challenge. In a pre-COVID world, that was not the case. But as with, I think, almost every industry right now, running into supply chain considerations around parts, materials, underlying commodities like steel, even shipping containers are tough to come by right now. So we're dealing with a number of supply chain considerations. For us, it's finding the right materials, the right partners, trying to balance the demand for our products with how we can, it's often, 6 to 9 months to actually develop a project. And then of course, once an operator really wants to get going, since everything needs to happen almost immediately. So that side of our business carries challenges, but, would echo, some of the commentary from the other panelists here on the cannabis product side of our business, medical and recreational. We look to work with the industry's leading suppliers. We work with, I think, all the largest Canadian LPs and a lot of the mid-tier folks through our retail chains. Developing those supplier relationships is incredibly important. We always try and take a customer centric approach, whether it's our B2B business, our retail, or our wholesale business. We need to deliver the best products at the best prices to create value. At the end of the day, you guys would agree, it's not about a celebrity endorsement. It's about that end customer seeing value in the products that you're producing. So, I think at the end of the day, the companies that are going to win in the cannabis market, medical or recreational, is the companies that are taking a customer centric approach.
That's great. Alvaro, when you think about entering into these new markets, how much do you depend on suppliers? And when you're looking to enter a new country, how important it is to you knowing that your operations are, domiciled in Colombia?
Well, Rob, I think we take a very, particularly now, more agnostic approach. Like, we do have a facility in Colombia. It's very, very, very high quality. But as everybody knows, it's a small facility because it's not my obsession or our obsession to be, the largest producer of cannabis. I think our obsession is to find demand. Latin America and Europe, and let's go to the UK, you have to do a lot of challenges. How do you convince the patient? You have to convince the doctor. The doctor is convinced by evidence. The evidence is created by data, and the data is created by population. And that's why we focus so much on that patient. What's the value of that patient to us? How can we get that high profitability that we're able to enjoy because we are trying to offer value-added products and services to the patients, and they remain loyal to our brand. I mean, today we have 50% retention rate from our patients and going up. We're selling every day more than the day before, and people are getting, because we have a very high quality product, and we know how to convince the doctor to the data that we produce in our clinics. That being said, for example, in Europe, because we're so patient focused, we decided what is it that the market's looking for. I think Kyle talked about it: dry flower, oils, and of course finished API like Dronabinol. What is the patient looking for? What are the strains that they're looking for? What's the right quality? How do we educate those doctors? How do we access the pharmacy? And then we will work backwards and find how do we find the right supplier relationships that can produce for us what we need. And I think the future of the company is certainly going to be less focused on the cultivation side of it, because I think we're more interested in knowing how do we capture that demand. But being an engineer, for us, it was always also, you cannot subcontract what you don't know how to build yourself, like in a tunnel. We do have all the expertise to know exactly what we want, and then we can develop with the suppliers like we're doing right now in Europe with some suppliers, what is the next pipeline of products, knowing that we're going to take care of building that demand. And the more patients that we're able to capture, the more value we're able to provide with the company with very high profitability. That in the end, I think, 5 years from now, when we talk about valuations, it's really going to be about, for me, how much value are you producing? And so those are two different strategies. I'm not even sure if they can coexist. So we've never actually wanted to produce everything from on our own. And I think if you look at Latin America, particularly in the next 3 years, every country like Brazil and Mexico eventually will start to cultivate their own product. So you have to also understand those dynamics and how you're going to play with that. But if you are able to create that demand and having a sticky demand and be able to create great profitability on this, I think the supply will follow. And we just have to continue to building relationships with different companies, different suppliers, so that they can continue to produce what makes our product unique. what makes our products unique is the data that we're able to collect and the ability that we have to be able to bring patients to our clinics and be able to generate value. So it's a sort of like a different way that we look at it. But I think first comes demand, then comes supply for our business. And there will be good companies, even those who are here in this region that can produce all of that, and they will be very successful as well. But for us, we'll always be, how do we go after that patient and create that market? It's in very early stages to create.
Perfect. Kyle, I want to circle back, maybe the last question for you. You talked about the international market, just forget what you know about the U.S. How else, outside of the impact of growing and the regulations there, what other barriers or ways that you would educate people relative to, like, we don't have the Banking Act yet on the U.S. side? What other impediments are out there from an international perspective, whether it's moving cash around, certifying employees, et cetera, the non-cannabis touching aspects of the world as we all operate, let's just say a pet food company?
Sure. Well, where to begin?
Yeah.
Let's start with some of the big ones that are slightly related to cannabis, but maybe more related to pharmaceuticals, and that would be, GMP certification. GMP certification took at least 5 years to obtain. We had raised $200 million of venture financing to get that. How many businesses can get backed with that level of capital, run cash burn negative for 5 years just to get a piece of paper? Then
Sure.
The next thing you find out is the piece of paper is only half the equation. Now you have to maintain the piece of paper. The piece of paper then has to be, validated by site audits and other things. And you can't alter your manufacturing process during that period of time while you have that certification. So GMP is just a different environment. You walk into our facility, no watches, no rings, different clothes, certain procedures to go in and out. It's foreign for a lot of people. And so you just have to get used to it, because it's half what the building looks like, and probably the more important half is the procedures and the culture that surrounds it. And it's just a very, very different mentality that is hard for even pharmaceutical companies to get. I mean, just as context, there is one other EU GMP certified company in Colombia, and it's Colombia's largest pharmaceutical manufacturing company called Procas. So there's only 2 companies in the whole country that have this. That's how much goes into it. Then I think probably the next thing is, welcome to, if we're talking about Europe, you have to deal with a new culture, right? Even within Europe, most people might say, okay, I need a European team. Well, a German team is different than a Portuguese team, is different than a British team, which isn't even technically part of the European Union anymore, right? So there's a lot of these peculiarities. They could drill down to really basic things like European privacy rules, are actually more complicated to adapt. Like our security cameras can't capture facial images. There's some weird things like that you're not used to. Our security forces in Portugal aren't allowed to carry firearms, for example. So that changes some goes to a bend. You can bend, not break kind of mentality for security. So those are some interesting things. Then we'll get into the logistics. Imagine showing up to an airport in Colombia and talking to a 25-year-old baggage handler from Lufthansa and say, hey, we're loading 10 kilograms of cannabis onto the plane. Okay, that's new. I haven't had that one. Let me call my boss. Oh, my boss doesn't know what to do with that. Let me call, his director, right? So there are some just kind of, quirks like that to it. And of course, there's different labor laws, right? There are different ways that you have to enter into employment contracts in Germany, and at certain points you might even enter worker council territory if the employee base gets big enough. So I mean, I could really go in a whole host of directions.
Sure.
That's just a small sampling. I'll probably end with maybe an anecdote. Of all the things that Cleverleaves has accomplished. 500 employees globally, the NASDAQ, all of the stuff, and everyone here has accomplished great things. We kind of chide that the most difficult thing we ever did was upgrade the Wi-Fi in Frankfurt, right? Just that simple things could be very, very arduous and bureaucratic in terms of getting it done. So, you just have to be ready for that. And if you're a Canadian or American who hasn't done business over there, again, be patient.
Yeah. No, I was lucky enough earlier in my career to work in 40 some different countries, so I understand simple things like power grids and the ability to get a T1 line, as an example. This dates me, obviously, because most people don't even know what a T1 line is. That said, I mean, I'd love to explore with John here as you think about, your working across borders, North America, United States. What has been the biggest noticeable difference from you is most people don't really get the Canadian perspective from the US side of things. They really haven't really studied the Canadian way of how cannabis grew up. They just kind of put their blinders on and say, we're only focused on the US. But you're one of the few companies who straddle both borders or both sides of the border. Would love to just get your thoughts on how you see working there.
Yeah, no, and Ken would kind of echo the theme that everything, I mean, in the Canadian market context, every province even is different. So, we struggle here in the Canadian market. We are federally regulated by Health Canada. We also are regulated within every single province in which we operate, so that there can be incredible complexity even operating within your own national border. From there, you can imagine the hoops you need to jump through to ship genetics from Canada to Australia or Tanzania or Israel are quite incredible. The layers of red tape that you're going through to execute on those transactions. Take that to our B2B business. Every single jurisdiction has its own iteration of building code, fire code, workplace safety components to consider on project build outs and things like that. So, it adds incredible layers of complexity operating nationally and then internationally, but that creates huge opportunity. And I think that's really why all of us are here. Today, there's a global opportunity that exists as the cannabis industry goes from illicit to illicit market opportunity, medical and recreational use over the next few decades. And I think all of the companies joining today are really on the forefront of that opportunity.
Well, with that, we've kind of come to our time limit. I want to say thank you to everybody today. And again, as a reminder, each company is available for one-on-one meetings. If you have not registered, please do so. If you want, please send me an email at Breza, BREZA, @lythampartners.com. And with that, we'll wrap it up. And thank you, everybody. Thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Thank you, everybody. John, Kyle, Aras. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you guys. Cheers.
Thank you all.